Hey everybody, this is Chris Nowlin from Knuckleball Nation, and we're here to do a video mechanical assessment of Gus Gandy coming out of Georgia. Don't let Gus's relatively young age fool you. He's actually one of the more talented pitchers I've ever seen taking the spin off the baseball. Now Gus has been attending clinics all over the country, and I've worked with him quite a bit, so his mechanics are already fairly good. Now, the last thing we worked on at the Phil Niekro clinic in Atlanta was the importance of keeping a strong back leg throughout the delivery. In this video, you can see that Gus has been working very hard on that back leg, and he executes the adjustment very well. You can see as Gus creates momentum toward the target that he keeps his back knee turned out. Keeping that back knee turned out into a strong position delays hip rotation, which is critical for executing a knuckleball. We want to delay hip rotation so that all the rotational components of the delivery happen in sequence, so that the kinetic chain remains unbroken. To understand if your back leg is in a strong position, simply draw a straight line from your hip to your back foot. You want to keep your knee outside of this line for as long as possible. You can see that Gus is keeping his knee in a very strong position even as his front leg reaches out. This allows him to control the moment that his hips begin to rotate. Turning the knee inside of that line rotates the hips and begins the rotational kinetic chain. That rotational kinetic chain must remain intact in order to deliver a quality knuckleball. We need the hips, spine, shoulders, and arm to rotate in a smooth sequence in order to maintain fine motor control over the baseball. Many pitchers, especially young pitchers, collapse that back leg immediately. This rotates the hips prematurely, forcing the pitcher to wait a second before turning the spine, shoulders, and arm to deliver the baseball. The kinetic chain is broken, and the timing of the knuckleball becomes much more difficult. But a strong back leg is only half the battle when it comes to rotating the hips effectively. You can essentially view hip rotation like a twist-off bottle cap. You put pressure on one side of the bottle cap with your thumb, which serves as your back leg, and you put counter pressure on the bottle cap with your fingers, which is your front leg. You need both to get a proper twist.
Ow! Ow! It's twist off, twist off! Twist off! Oh, hi. Soda?
No thanks.
Studies show that counter rotation from your front leg increases pitch velocity. Generating counter pressure takes a lot of strength, and the timing of the counter pressure must be coordinated. We're going to watch Justin Verlander here because he's such a great example of this. You can see that he keeps an incredibly strong back leg as he strides down the mound. But it's what he does when his front foot strikes that's even more impressive. He is going to straighten that front leg out, which will send counter pressure into his front hip. This will give his back hip something to aggressively rotate around. And since the front hip is being stopped by an aggressive front leg drive, the chest will catapult over the front hip toward the target to create more momentum. And most importantly, the arm will catapult toward the target at a higher speed. This helps us create the centripetal force that we need to hold the baseball to our fingertips throughout the pitch. But the timing of the front leg drive must be coordinated. The foot should land tension-free, and once the elbow goes into valgus stress, that's when you drive back into your hip. As you can see here, Verlander's arm is about to go into valgus stress. That's when the ball drags behind the elbow before being catapulted over. The arm now has elastic energy, and the arm should stay relatively tension-free. After all, the looser your arm, the more control over the ball you have with your fingertips. From here, you create velocity, centripetal force, and arm whip using your front leg drive. Right now, Gus isn't getting much out of his front leg. His front leg stays flexed around 90 degrees. Some of his upper body momentum then dissipates because he is drifting. But it is right around this moment, when his arm begins to lay back into valgus stress, that he should begin to think about front leg drive into his front hip. But as you notice on his finish here, because there is no front leg drive, his upper body drifts off target. His head veers off toward the left-handed batter, and his right foot comes down in front of his left foot. He finishes in an over-rotated position, with his chest squared up to the dugout rather than toward home plate. As you can see, even into his 40s, Wakefield did everything correctly. Now let's watch it again in super slow motion. Notice he rocks back, he keeps his leg in a relatively strong position, and when his arm goes into Valgus Stress, he pushes back with that front leg, squaring him up to the target. This is Gus Gandy's next mechanical adjustment.